If you're a beginner in acrylic and oil painting and wondering which one to start with, then this video will be perfect for you, because at the end of this video, you will learn which one was easier for me, more fun for me, less stressful, and much cheaper. So at the end of this video, you will have all your questions answered. If you like this kind of content, please don't forget to like so that I can know. And also, if you want to show your support, you can always subscribe. I had a few comparison points right here, and I would like to start if you don't mind. What you see here is my oil painting, and I think mixing oil paint was slightly more difficult than acrylic paint because it's thicker. And you can see that I'm adding to my green and black some yellow here, and it's taken me a while to have a uniform mixture here, especially because I'm mixing with a brush. If you have a palette knife, I think it will be easier to mix oil paint. And here I have my acrylic paint, and you will see in just 5 seconds I will be able to mix green with black. That easy. See, with maybe 10 brush strokes, it's already mixed uniformly. And I'm adding some yellow. I'm doing the exact thing that I did in the oil paint. So I think this is one thing to consider. It's easier to mix. The second thing is the brushes. If you want to keep clean brush, then please, in oil painting, use one brush for the darker shades and one brush for the lighter shades. It makes your job easier. And have a piece of cloth like this or a paper towel to clean it out. For acrylic, you just need water and also a piece of cloth. It is easier to clean acrylic brushes. Number 3, which one is more forgiving? If you ask me, it's oil paint. Look at this. With a palette knife, I can easily scrape my paint and paint over. That's it. Because it doesn't dry so fast, it dries more quickly than acrylic, I can go in and fix my mistake right away. See, I'm using the edge of my palette knife here, and I'm lifting off all the paint that I don't want there, and I'm painting it over with my new color. So what about acrylic? Well, I don't know if you know better, but I couldn't scrape it off with my palette knife because it was too thin. And I tried to lift it off with my cloth, my piece of cloth. That did not work either. It smudged. So I had a wet brush, a damp brush, and I tried to kind of pick up the paint like that or just a little bit blended. And that's the only way I could get away with my mistake. Speaking of blending, I think oil paint was much easier to blend. Look, because again, my paint is not dry yet, so I can go in with my either wet or dry brush, and with tiny circular motions, I can blend those colors in each other very nicely. I'm looking at my reference photo quite a lot because I want to make sure which boundaries are more sharp, which boundaries are smoother. You can see that I'm not lifting off any paint, even though I go over it over and over again. And even when I am taking a darker color here, as you can see, and instead of circular motions, you can do some up and down motions as well. And you can see when I get up how shiny it looks because of the way the light reflects. But blending acrylic was not that easy for me because it dries so quickly. Here, I tried to add a mid-tone, and I think the green part was still wet, the green paint. So after I applied my mid-tones there, I grabbed my slightly damped brush and tried to blend those colors in. But unfortunately, it wasn't very successful because my light green color was already almost completely dry. So I think this was the biggest challenge for me. I'm going to work on it and I'm going to improve my skills, but still, it takes some time. And here you can see all the colors that I just applied, all those layers are wet. Now, with my dry brush, I can go over them and blend them. Instead of, again, circular motions, I'm doing these linear strokes and it works. So I think with acrylic, the best way to go is to blend them when they are wet. If you want to keep them wet longer, you can have a retarder. It's a chemical to add into your acrylic paint, and then your acrylic paint will act like an oil paint. It's going to dry much slower. So you can see, again, I couldn't blend it over. So I believe here, the lesson that we should learn is your final layer is important. So you have to think through, plan through before you start. I think it's fair to say here that oil paint is more forgiving. Another thing I found it pretty stressful is that because my paint was drying so fast, I had to decide quickly. I didn't have any chance to think like, okay, do I want this color or maybe the other color? You know, with oil paint, I had time to stop and think, but with acrylic paint, I think I was like, go, go, go. And I was like, I don't know where to go. So that's why I keep changing my mind. And that's why you see a lot of shift here. I was so worried about blending that I couldn't even make the right decisions for my painting. And with the dark colors, I think it was extra scary because it's very dark here and I'm trying to get into a much lighter shade. And for that, I tried my wet brush and I think it was much more successful than my dry brush. Yeah. Again, though, I think this is much more stressful than oil paint. And you can see here, my both greens right here are wet, okay? So the dark green and the light green. What I'm doing right now is mixing black with my green to create a mid-tone in between. And I'm trying to, act fast because I want to just put it in before the both layers dry. And I'm going in and you can see it blends perfectly when it's wet. Let's talk about this drying time. On the bottom right, you can see my palette from the very beginning. I'm almost finishing my painting, by the way. It's been 4 hours at this point, and I can still use the very first color mixture that I created, or maybe second one. And I'm adding more green or blue to it, more black to it to get a darker shade. This is amazing because that means I don't have to keep making the mixtures again and again. But with acrylic, when it's dry, it's gone. I tried to reactivate like this, but you can see that it's not working. I thought about acrylic like watercolor, but it doesn't act like watercolor. You cannot really reactivate it by just adding water. So you have to create the mixture from the scratch. And this is a problem because then I cannot match the exact color because I don't remember how much red or how much blue I added in the first place. So you can see that I'm having a lot of problems here matching the exact green that I had in mind. So this is a big problem for a beginner. Of course, when you have experience, I'm sure this is not a problem at all. Besides the retarder, my suggestion to slow down the drying time is using a palette like this. Because it's smaller and it's deeper, it's going to take more time to dry than this flat palette that I've been using. Also, with acrylic, if you use bigger brushes, then I think you can save some time on that drying time as well. So let's talk about toxicity. I know that they say oil paint is toxic, you have to be careful. Honestly, oil paint is not toxic, but the thinner that we put in it, which is called turpentine or mineral spirits, those chemicals are the toxic ones. Maybe sometimes we use oil in them, sometimes we use thinner in them. So whatever we are putting in actually is a chemical. And whenever we play with chemicals, we need to be careful. You need to make sure that you are keeping these chemicals sealed in a bottle or a container. And also you need to ventilate your working area. You need to open all the windows and doors so that you will have fresh air. In this painting, for example, I did not use any spirits. I mean, maybe other kind of spirits, but not for the painting. So let's talk about the price. Of course, oil painting is more expensive. We are not going to lie here. And acrylic is much cheaper. But also, sometimes oil painting gets more expensive because we think we all need these colors, but we don't. Or we need all these other chemicals that we don't actually have to have. The brands I used in this painting are Winsor & Newton, Old Holland, and Williamsburg. And these are really top brands in oil painting. These are really good brands to start with. When it comes to acrylic paint, you don't have any toxicity because basically you're working with water. So you thin your paint with water. It's not a chemical. And the acrylic paint itself is not toxic. It's a water-based paint, just like watercolor. The brand I'm using for my acrylic is Artico, but there are so many brands out there. In terms of which colors to choose, ultramarine blue, crimson red, and lemon yellow should be enough for you, of course, together with white and black. But if you think that, okay, Ece, I am a beginner, I need more colors, I don't know how to get other colors from these primary colors, then you should definitely watch this video first. If you still are not sure and if you want more colors in your set, then if you're painting portraits, you should think about maybe raw umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, some kind of green in your set. And of course, again, crimson red, ultramarine blue, and lemon yellow, black and white. So at the end, what do I think? Which one was better for a beginner? I'll be brutally honest. I really liked oil painting. It almost felt like working with pen pastels. I don't know if you ever worked with pen pastels before, but again, I felt very peaceful. I felt relaxed, less stressful because I have time and it's forgiving. Because its drying time is much longer, I felt like I had more space to think and create. Also, I found it easier to blend with oil paint as well. But with acrylic, I know that it's cheaper. So as a student, if you don't have a budget, it might be a good place to start. And the fact that it dries quickly may be helpful for you because then when it's dry, you can work on it as a second layer and third layer. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. So I understand that too. It depends on what you're looking for, but I do think that I love oil paint better. So what is your opinion? Have you tried both before and what's your preference? And if you're an experienced artist already, for a new beginner artist, what would you recommend? Which one would you recommend? Please share in the comments. If you're an oil painting beginner, I had explained some techniques about oil painting before. If you haven't watched it yet, I am putting it right here for you too. I'll see you in my next video or maybe there. Bye.